everyone, and thank you so much for the very kind invitation. I feel already inspired in the presence of innovators who are pushing the limits on what is possible and necessary in education. I'm going to share with you a case study of a pretty large-scale innovation in the university I work for, Georgia Tech. And I'm gonna share this not to in any way demonstrate or try to convince you that we have somehow found the light, but we are very proud of what we've done. And as someone who has been in different institutions, I think I look at this as an illustration of how complex and how important these pretty large-scale innovations are. And of course, I am a university administrator, so I'm going to almost by definition have a perspective that is more institutional than technological. But I hope it's interesting for you. And so that is Georgia Tech. That's the beautiful city of Atlanta in the southeast, which prepares us well for heat waves, by the way, because it's a very warm part of the world. Georgia Tech is about 135 years old. It's in the middle of what is now a thriving city in Atlanta. The whole neighborhood around Georgia Tech is being transformed by our efforts to really create an innovation hub in the city. It's really a vibrant place. But I use that photo especially to point out this tech tower. That's a very old building. Georgia Tech is not a new university. This is a university that has been shaped by the institutional arrangements and the expectations of traditional universities in the US, which makes the story I'm about to tell you a little bit even more remarkable. So these are our four strategic bets, our four strategic goals at Georgia Tech. This is not normal, and these goals have been shaped by the story I'm about to tell you. We want to be a national leader in outcomes and value for all students. This very week, presidents in American universities normally will tell you that they hate rankings. That's what we're supposed to say. I actually love rankings, especially because they tend to be good to us, but also the more rankings there are, the better we can tell our story. This week, there was a ranking by the Princeton Review that looks at value for students. And the top private university was Princeton, the top public university was Georgia Tech. So we take this very, very seriously to make sure that we provide real value for our students, that the investment they make is worth their while. The number two big bet for us is very rare, especially among elite research universities, which is to double the number of degrees granted per year over this next decade, to double the number of degrees granted. Most elite universities in the United States have no interest in growing, as a matter of fact. In fact, Georgia Tech, as I arrived 6 years ago, had a little bit of an ambivalent feeling about growth. MIT is small, Caltech is tiny, Carnegie Mellon is small. Why should Georgia Tech be large? Well, not only we are large, we're now the fastest growing university in the United States, and we're very, very proud, so much so that we now have declared it as a strategic goal of the university. The number three big bet is we are a research university. We're the third largest recipient of research grants from the federal government, which until this year was a good thing. Now we're a little bit nervous, but we're still the number three recipient of federal grants. And our commitment is that over this decade, that portfolio of research is going to also double in size, and finally to build a national hub for innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship in our city of Atlanta. So that's what sort of we're trying to accomplish strategically at Georgia Tech. But the story started about 11 years ago when a group of innovators slash crazies at Georgia Tech had the idea, this is on the heels of the now infamous year of the MOOC, the idea was, can we create an entirely online MOOC-based Masters of Science in Computer Science that would be offered at a fraction of the cost of what it would take to normally do your full-time Masters in Computer Science at Georgia Tech, at a fraction of the cost, entirely online. So as you can imagine, when this idea was floated in the context of a traditional research university, people freaked out. Many of the faculty said this is not going to work, or if it works, it's going to destroy our university. And I'll get to that in a minute. So I'll tell you what happened afterwards, but it all started because of a challenge from Sebastian Thrun from Udacity. He visited Georgia Tech in 2012. He and then Dean of Computing, Zvi Galil, had this crazy idea about what could be possible in this new era of the MOOCs. By 2013, AT&T agreed to provide $2 million in seed funding. In May of 2013, this is light speed in the context of a public university. I mean, to really have the agreement from the Board of Regents of a public university like Georgia Tech. By 2013, the board approved the program with a projected tuition of $6,000. Now, for those of you, especially in the European context, where university tuition may vary between $0 and $1,000 per year, this may seem like a lot. In the American context, this is as cheap as it gets. This is like unthinkable that you could get an entire master's at a leading research university for that kind of price. So in January of 2014, again, I don't even know how they managed to do this quickly, especially on the regulatory side. The program launches with 5 classes and 380 students. So this is what happens afterwards. This is a little bit of a timeline. But in 2017, 3 years later, Georgia Tech decides, well, this is going very well. Let's do another master's in data analytics. And in 2018, there was a study done with Harvard and Georgia Tech researchers. It's very important that we have people from outside of Georgia Tech doing this study, so we could not be just trying to prove the quality of our own product. And what they found is that the program was delivering learning outcomes and quality that are totally comparable to the traditional masters. In 2018, we launched the third one, the Masters in Cybersecurity. March of 2020, trigger warning. Don't want us to think about the crazy years of COVID, but it turned out that all this experience really saved the day for Georgia Tech. And this past year, this whole experience led us to create a new college. Now, Georgia Tech, again, we've been around for 135 years. We have only 6 colleges. We don't create colleges all the time. This is a big deal for us. We have created now a college of what we call lifetime learning, specifically designed for non-traditional learners. So, of course, these were the traditional elements. These traditional elements still persist in our normal programs. Students apply. Students pay tuition to enroll. We make them work, and then they graduate after they complete 30 credit hours. And the idea was the new degree has to meet all those basic requirements. We don't give a degree that says on the diploma you did it online. You get the exact same degree that Georgia Tech would grant in the traditional program. But the unique elements that we added to that was it has to be delivered entirely online, it has to be affordable, it has to be inclusive, and it has to be very flexible. Our goal was to serve individuals who traditionally have been left out of a program. Think about it. You are in your late 20s, you're a mother of 2, you work in the IT department for whatever bank, in Colorado, there's absolutely no way that you can stop your life and move to Atlanta for 2 years to get a master's. Now all of a sudden you have a chance to do it. And to do that and get the same degree that you would get in a top research American university. Now the admissions philosophy changed dramatically. Now, normally, I don't know if this works, normally we would get a whole bunch of thousands of applications. Our traditional master's has a very limited capacity, and you would get the very, very best. That would be the little box at the top. In the new model, that was not what was going to apply. If you meet the minimum qualifications, you're in. That's it. It's not a selective process. We just want to make sure we have some minimum level of skills that we want you to demonstrate because we think is necessary for you to succeed in the program. If you meet them, you're in. We're not going to artificially limit to whatever size of our physical space is. So this is the traditional master's programs. Again, we continue to offer many of these at Georgia Tech. This has not ended. Programs that are limited by the capacity of the physical infrastructure, that tend to have a more monolithic audience and narrow focus. They have high barriers to entry, very high exclusivity, and very high tuition. And with these programs, we were trying to create a whole different way of understanding our mission. High inclusivity. I mean, these ideas in the context, again, of a top research university are revolutionary, and for some people, this would be the end of the world. High inclusivity. No matter how big the brand is, we want to make sure we reach the many, not the few. Low barriers of entry, economies of scale, unlimited capacity. These ideas were 11 years ago absolutely revolutionary. So what could go wrong? All these things could go wrong. I mean, these are, just imagine being in a faculty meeting at Georgia Tech 11 years ago and all the complaints that were heard. No faculty is going to want to take part of this. This is not a real Georgia Tech education. It's going to harm our brand. It's going to cheapen the brand. We're going to go from an elite research university to becoming a broad, it's going to ruin our brand. There's going to be no interest in the US for this. This is all going to be done for only foreign students. This low tuition is crazy. We're not going to be able to maintain it. Sooner or later, you're going to have to crank the prices up. Low retention, low graduation rates. Remember the dismal finish rate in MOOCs? So this is going to happen for this program as well. Students are going to hate it. There's going to be no sense of community. How can you feel a sense of community if you're doing all of your work online? It's not going to improve access after all. And why would people pay for content that is available for free? Open edX. Why would you pay for money? So this was a huge head scratcher for most people at Georgia Tech. And this is what happens. 11 years later, this actually was the 10th anniversary. Sebastian is there in the middle, and Zvi Galil is next to me. Zvi is the dean at the time, David Joyner. Those are the crazies. Those are the crazies that made this happen. Now very, very proud. So it was kind of a crazy idea. Now we're very proud. We celebrate it. It's become a core part of who we are. And I'll tell you why. Not only that we gave an honorary doctorate this past year to Sebastian, because what he helped us do was not only transform Georgia Tech, in many ways it has transformed higher education in the US. We now host the conference on degrees at scale, and people show up, people want to know. So what was an absolute no-no, we should not be doing that, now is actually bringing the support of many, many others. So this is how this program has transformed Georgia Tech. This was total enrollment at Georgia Tech between 2004 and 2013. So Georgia Tech was growing. we served around 21,000 students. This is what happened since 2013. We're now a 53,000 student university. We are the largest university in our state, and we're the fastest growing university in America over the last decade, which is crazy that we're the largest university in our state because that was not our function. There's the University of Georgia, our big rival in football, by the way. We don't like them very much because they beat us in football. University of Georgia is supposed to be the comprehensive university. We have large universities that work on access, Kennesaw State, Georgia State. Georgia Tech was supposed to be the small elite research technological university, and now Georgia Tech serves more students than anybody else in the state. And the way we now are 53,000 students is because the online programs, these new crazy programs, this experiment that was launched 11 years ago, now serve 23,000 students. These are the biggest masters in the galaxy. Actually, I used to claim that we were the biggest masters in Georgia, and then I said in the US, and no one found a counterexample. Then we say in the world, no one found a counterexample. So now I'm claiming they're the biggest in the galaxy. Zvi Galil tells me that not only they're the biggest master's programs in the galaxy, that they may be the biggest programs, like that you get one specific degree of any kind, graduate or undergraduate, in the galaxy. If you do find a counterexample, I want to hear. So I might have to be more modest in my claim. But so far, I haven't found one. So this is a little bit more detail. The blue line is our total enrollment. The yellow line is online, and the gray line is our Georgia Tech Atlanta programs. So if it weren't for the online programs, we would have been, on a kind of a gradual growth. I mean, Georgia Tech is really is growing, but we would have been now like just a 27,000 person university, 53,000 students. To the point that now, as of today, now we are, I guess we've become an online university, although this might be offensive to some of my colleagues. Online programs now account for more than half of the degrees, or the students that Georgia Tech grants. Now, about the brand, remember one of the concerns of the faculty. This is going to kill our brand. It's going to cheapen our brand. What do you mean anybody from Colorado can take this program, pay only $6,000? This is going to cheapen the brand. So what happened to the traditional campus-based program? These are, the top line are applications to the on-campus masters. So before the online masters was launched, we were getting about between 1,000 and 1,500 applications to get the campus-based master's programs at Georgia Tech. Since we launched the online masters, we're now getting almost 4,000 applications. This is an increase of 3 times, 4 times the demand for the traditional program. I don't call this a destruction of brand equity. On the contrary. So somehow, the fact that we now have Georgia Tech online students from all over the world, if anything, has created more interest in coming and doing the old-fashioned on-campus program at Georgia Tech. Fascinating. Now, this is what happened in terms of citizenship. Sorry about the quality, but I'll process that for you. The top line, the top blue line is how many of the students are American, and the red line is how many of the students are foreign. The dotted lines is what happens for the on-campus program, right? So what you can see, remember, one of the issues and the criticisms was you're just creating this online program that is going to serve almost exclusively foreign students. We're a public university. We owe ourselves to serving the interests of the citizens of the state of Georgia and more broadly of the United States. Well, yes, we're very, very proud to be serving lots of students from outside of the United States. That's the solid red line at the bottom. But the majority continues to be, by and large, American students. Not only that, if you look at who enrolls in our campus-based computer science program, that is a majority of non-US students. So if anything, the online program has done a better job at serving the needs of our domestic students. This is where the students come from. And as you can imagine, of course, the number one source is the United States. And the biggest international markets are India, China, Canada, Australia. But increasingly, even Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and lots of from Europe. So it does have a very broad participation. So this is what has happened to our tuition. Now, this is a big deal because universities, as you may have heard, American universities in the last few months are under intense scrutiny from government authorities. And a big part of that is a response to criticisms about the cost of access to higher education in the United States. The top line is not visible in this slide for some reason, but right where it says national average, that is the national average of tuition in the United States, which would be about $60,000. That would be the average for a graduate degree in the United States. Georgia Tech, we pride ourselves to try to keep costs down. I know I'll get very little sympathy from my European friends, but to offer our graduate degrees at $40,000 is actually a pretty amazing deal in the United States. But look at what the OMS did, okay? So we had promised to have an affordable program, and that slide puts it in perspective. By the way, that's very important because remember, one of the areas of criticism was you are not going to be able to maintain the low price. That's what we've done. Remember the other criticism, you're not going to retain the students. People don't finish MOOCs. Why would they finish this program? The green line at the top is how many of the people who have ever enrolled, are either still enrolled or have graduated. And bottom line is that retention has settled around 60, above 60%. 60%. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. The blue line is the cumulative number of degrees that we have issued. During graduation ceremonies, until this year, I used to shake the hand of every graduate. I do have a bucket of ice at home between ceremonies. And we had to split our graduation ceremony from one ceremony to 2 to 3 to 4 because I insisted I would shake the hand of every graduate. For the first time, I'm very sad about this, it's now impossible because the vast majority, we get 1,000, 2,000 people from the online program. So this is the first year I have not been able to shake everybody's hand. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It means that this is thousands of people who are getting their dream of a Georgia Tech degree thanks to this innovation. This is how much it takes people to graduate. What's very important, these are semesters, right? So I think that sort of the 6 semesters, that would be sort of like somebody who does it in 2 years. What's important in this graph is how spread this graph is, which means that the working professionals that we're serving, do it at their own pace. They do it in a way that fits their own lifestyle. And some people may be in a hurry and may be able to finish the degree and willing to finish the degree in 2 years. Some people may take 3, 4, 5 years, but they will eventually get there. This is the number of degrees we've already given. Think about this. As of now, we have given a total of 4,000 degrees, 2,000 in 2,500 in computer science, 1,300 in analytics, and I don't even know what that is, 400 or something, 300 in cybersecurity. People are finishing the degrees. People are getting their degrees from Georgia Tech. Now, we asked students, why are you doing this program? What is your biggest motivator? And this was a little bit of a surprise, because you would think, and that was one of our hypotheses going in, is like, this is all about career advancement. Well, actually, the number one reason people cite for getting their master's degree is just the desire for knowledge. People, they're genuinely curious, they're interested, and they want to learn. This is very different when you ask the traditional on-campus students. Advancement in their career, obviously, is the second. The value of getting a degree. The fact that we charge very little is also a factor, but interestingly, it is not the number one reason why people choose this program, which is making it a little tempting to raise the price, by the way, but my colleagues won't let me. Flexibility, pleasure, the prestige of the brand. Interestingly, we also thought people would be drawn to the prestige of the Georgia Tech brand. It's really not the top reason why people are doing it. At least that's what they're telling us. This is the alumni. Remember, another fear was people are going to be very unhappy from this program. Very unhappy. In fact, the alumni at the beginning also complained. He's like, how can you be a Georgia Tech alum if you've never been to the Georgia Tech campus or watched a Georgia Tech football game or something? 97% agree that this program was worth their investment. That's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. We don't get those numbers from people who actually move across the country and live with us. When they live with us and are part of our community, they start seeing lots of the problems and issues. They get more critical. These people love it. 97% agree they would recommend. Think about the brand. People were worried about cheapening the brand. Now you have thousands of students all over the country and all over the world who actually had a great experience at Georgia Tech, and they're telling their friends. 81% agree that the program helped their career. 51% agree that they got a higher salary because of it. This is some on race and ethnicity. I won't get into that. That's important in the U.S. and anyway, I'll spare you that one. In gender, I think you were asking me about gender earlier. This is the graph. I was surprised by this. I thought that the online delivery would be particularly appealing to professional women, and it turns out that the proportion of women doing the online program was significantly lower than on campus at the beginning. It is now catching up, and we're now almost at the same level as the on-campus program. Still dismal. Still, Georgia Tech is not isolated from the overall trends around the world, which has become very, very hard to convince young girls to choose careers in computer science, and that's something beyond what Georgia Tech alone can change, but something to keep in mind. So think about it. After all that progress, we're just about less than 25% women in the program. So that's an area of disappointment for me. Fascinating. This is something we did not plan for. It is now one of the most diverse programs we've ever offered in terms of serving people with disabilities. We did not set out to do this. We did not, that was not the goal. We didn't even, honestly, I wish we could claim intentionality. We were not thinking about that. And it turns out now, this is a whole story from Maitri, who tells a story about, actually, think about the second paragraph. After my bachelor's, I was contemplating whether it was even possible for me to get my desired master's degree without moving to the USA. For someone who has often faced not acceptance during admissions, right from kindergarten to college due to physical limitations, I was thrilled to get admitted for a master's course from such a prestigious university remotely. As with all new starts, I committed to it, but life, as you may agree, has its unique ways to throw challenges that seem to conspire and wreck everything that I have planned. And then she talks about how she finally got her degree. Think about it. I mean, there is now even this model of education is now one of the most accessible degree programs in terms of people with disabilities in the world. And we did not set out to be. I wish we could claim intentionality. Another area of criticism, remember, was that you cannot have a real sense of community in a program like this. You are isolated, you're in your home, you may or may not be in a city with other people taking this program. What is fascinating is the high numbers of graduates of the program who volunteer to remain as teaching assistants in the program. Huge numbers, and we don't pay very well, to be honest. We don't pay very well. It's not like people say, oh, this is a new source of income for me. What they're telling us is they want to be TAs because they miss that sense of community, that they became accustomed to developing a community that pushes your learning, that motivates you to learn, and all of a sudden after their degree was done, they were cut off from that. And they see being a TA as a way continuing that. We asked them, why did you want to be a TA? The first two numbers, just look at primary and primary. The first is online TAs. The second is residential TAs. Look at the motivations for the online TAs. And we've categorized them. Intrinsic motivations are the highest. To improve my resume is very low, but it's to improve my teaching ability, to network with faculty, to learn the material. And in terms of obtaining tuition waiver or for money is actually one of the lowest reasons, whereas the TAs, people who actually want to be a TA in the residential program, is much more extrinsic. I need a job, I need some money, I'll do this even if I hate it. Very different. So what we have found is also older, much more experienced people who want to be TAs in the program and retain this set of community. I don't know what this is. I'll spare this to you. So this is a comparison of the ages of the TAs in the traditional program and in the online program. If you look at the left bars are a percentage over 25 years old in the online versus the residential. The online is the yellow bar, the blue line is the residential. It's a much more experienced profile for those TAs, which is adding additional value because you are getting taught and advised by people with a whole bunch of experience in the field. Anyway, these are some of our good-looking instructors. What comes next? This has really been absolutely transformative. Think about it. From a crazy idea, from a few innovators, to really accounting now for half of the enrollments of a traditionally elite research university. So we are asking ourselves how to leverage this mass of students all over the world to expand our research mission. And David Joyner and some of the leaders in the program are already figuring out, think about modes of research that do crowdsourcing and invite people from all sorts of backgrounds to participate in research. Well, now we have a whole bunch of people who can code and be part of that. So we're developing some pilots, and I think you'll be hearing more about that. But that's a big question we're asking ourselves. How can we leverage these lessons to reduce the cost of the undergraduate program? So we still have not made the decision to offer an undergraduate program through this mechanism. I don't know that we will. We're in constant discussion. The undergraduate college experience at a place like Georgia Tech is a very powerful experience. We understand that we can't serve everybody, but it's a very powerful experience, where you live with peers, where you experience all the extracurricular activities, where you go to those football games, where you learn to grow and become an adult. So we're not there yet, but we're already using this technology to offer some of the super high enrollment classes like Intro to Computer Science, Intro to AI, and other classes. How can we expand access to computer science education to countries still underrepresented how can we go in Africa? If you saw the map that I showed you, we still have very few enrollments in Africa. Even at what is a low tuition price for America, it's still out of reach for many others. Can we do something about that? We're still exploring how that might happen. How can we stay up to date with artificial intelligence? I know we had one of the first student advising tools pre-ChatGPT. We had Jill Watson, which was a great experiment. So we're now trying to incorporate more and more of that student advising into the program itself and lifetime learning. So the impact of these programs has been so transformative at Georgia Tech that, as I mentioned last summer, we decided to create a whole new college on lifetime learning. Again, this was hard to explain to people. They see, no, you're Georgia Tech, you're an engineering school, you train technologists and engineers and all that. What is this thing about? Is what we said, listen, we have another big mission. People who want to switch their careers, people who want to accelerate their careers, people whose jobs have disappeared because of the impact of technology. It is part of our responsibility as a public university to serve those people. But we also want to turn what many of you do, the science of learning and the technology of learning, we want to turn it into a discipline. So in addition to providing non-degree programs, credentials, stackable credentials, and start innovating at scale with some of these models, we also want to create degree programs that will train the next you. Programs that will combine computer science, AI, learning science, cognitive psychology, even the business side. Part of what I've tried to demonstrate here, that is, many of the innovations that you're producing cannot have the intended impact if there is not equal innovation on the business side. How does this work in practice from a financial standpoint? So that is the goal of the College of Lifetime Learning, which after some persuasion, we finally had approved by all the relevant authorities. And this is the mission. We're focused on improving learning across the lifespan of a person, the impacts of new and ever-advancing technology, the changing landscape of the learning sciences, and the need for changes to the policy landscape to assist a person's journey in learning are the foci of three important drivers needed for a thriving workforce. So that's what we're up to. So stay tuned for a lot more information to come. But if you have colleagues that want to do their master's in learning science and technology, we're about to offer that program. I think it's only fair that we do it online too, but I don't know what will happen. So I'm going to skip this, but I'm going to skip my conversation about AI. You're going to have plenty of AI. Yes, AI matters. I have a bragging chart these are the biggest colleges producing AI. So now we're getting recognized because Georgia Tech produces more AI talent than anybody else in the country. Well, yeah, I mean, we have 23,000 people doing online masters with us. So chances are we're going to be the #1 provider of talent for all those fields. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to close by a little bit of a broader policy thought on what's happening in the US. I know many of you are probably reading, gosh, you know, we didn't have headlines in the front of the New York Times and the Washington Post about universities, rarely, only something crazy happened, maybe a shooting or something terrible. And now it looks like almost every day there is a headline on the newspaper about whatever the federal government or some agency is doing to universities. You have, of course, heard and read about how Harvard University, for example, has seen about $2.4 billion in research grants suspended by the federal government. Columbia got hundreds billion. Duke University, Johns Hopkins, all the top, many of the top sort of research universities have been actually laying off people because of these cuts. There have been threats that America may even make it more difficult for international students to get in. I hope those will be able to not. American universities remain one of the most open, working merit-based institutions I've ever been part of. They even hire Spaniards as presidents and professors and deans and all sorts of things. So we're very concerned also about the possibility of that our ability to attract, think about it, the huge advantage American universities have is that for those of you who like professional sports, we have first draft picks of talent in the world, in the global market for talent. We get to choose first. We have a preference in attracting talent from around the world, more than the universities in any other part of the world. And all of a sudden, we're putting that at risk. We may make it harder for international students to come to the US. We're cutting the research funding. American universities right now have more resources in research than the universities of virtually any other part of the world. And we're putting all of that at risk. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Well, I contend that the reason why some leaders in Washington, D.C., whether it's in the White House or in Congress, are going after universities is not happening in a vacuum. It's happening because American people are losing confidence in their universities. And that is not just a conjecture. We've been looking at polls of of the public sentiment about universities for over a decade, and trust has been severely declining. That chart is the public confidence. The blue line this is Gallup, and Gallup been asking Americans this question for a long time. Gallup is asking, how much confidence do you have in our universities? And we used to have about 60% of Americans, not too long ago, 2015, 60% of Americans said, I have a great deal or quite a lot of trust in our universities. Americans were very proud of our universities. That number now is tied with people who have very little or no confidence in American universities. That is terrifying. If you separate the numbers by Republican voters and Democratic voters, conservative voters now, mistrusters outweigh trusters. There are more Republican voters who actually dislike or have very little confidence in American universities than the other way around. And why is that? And I will not, I will spare you the details of that. In fact, so I don't distract you, I'll pause there. There are two sets of criticisms that Americans have in our universities, which people from the outside may be puzzled about this. What's wrong with these Americans? Turns out that since World War II, America has built the best universities in the world, and you're complaining? What's wrong with you? Well, there are two things. One is a set of perceptions of universities as not accessible, as too expensive, as too elitist. You go to campus, fancy buildings, fancy everything, and they say, these people are not interested in serving people like me. They're leaving me out. The other set of questions that many Americans have is more political, and I think that is not exclusive to the US. That's happening in Europe too. It's a perception that maybe universities have leaned too far in one side of the political spectrum. Maybe they're too liberal, they're too woke, and they're not too open to different points of view. Like if you have a conservative idea, you're going to be ostracized somehow on college campus. Those two sets of ideas have been growing and growing and growing in the US. So the argument that I'm making internally and with colleagues in other universities in the US is that we shouldn't just be defending ourselves from the next cut in research grants and whatnot, which we are, but we need to really be responsive to what is that critical sentiment in the American public. Ultimately, we are independent organizations, we're governed independently, that's very, very important, but we should be responsive. We don't act in a vacuum, we serve the people. And if the people have questions about what's happening in universities, we should do something about it. The story I've told you about the online masters, which was not motivated by the current political context, but interestingly, is one of the best answers Georgia Tech has in the current context. We're demonstrating to people, no, we are interested in serving people like you. We're innovating, we're using technology to serve everybody. We've created a program that does not artificially limit the number of people we can serve. We want to serve everybody. We've lowered the price in a crazy way to make sure that affordability is not an issue. So I'm closing with this reflection to hopefully make you think about how the innovations you're working on, the technologies that you're applying, they require larger scale change in institutions. Sometimes you get frustrated because you're trying to push something and it's very hard. Institutions are complex entities. But also, if you do your job right, and this is why it's essential that people like you continue to champion what you do, you may make universities not just great, but good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cabrera.